Well, honored to be with y'all. Appreciate it. I'm excited to follow Mac as a Zack. You know, we got the rhyming thing going on and talk a little bit about Kansas. But it's great to be with you. I appreciate being asked. And then also, it's good to be back with the HRES group. Yeah, it's been a minute for me. I was a former board member. I think I was started in like 2012 and then maybe stepped off the board like 2017 or so, 2016. So great group. Thank you for what you do and glad to talk about Kansas energy future policies and promise. And go. All right. There we go. Okay, so the way I'm calling the situation in Kansas is it's like a road trip, a dysfunctional road trip, okay, with energy policy in Kansas. You know, you've been on some of those where you may not disagree on where to stop, you know, what direction to head and all that. That's kind of how it felt like in Kansas with this dysfunctional road trip. You got folks that think maybe that we do have a problem with high electric rates. Maybe we don't. Maybe we need to think about what energy sources we use and which ones are those. What about, should we invest or should we hold on to our current energy infrastructure? All of those makes for disagreement amongst the stakeholders, the passengers in our road to an energy future in Kansas. Recently got an opinion editorial placed in the Kansas Reflector if you're interested in all that. What we're warning is if we go with what's been articulated as our current energy future, which is based on fossil fuels, we're going to be heading in the wrong direction and creating danger. So next slide, please. So here's some of the policy drivers causing some discontent or some diversion in the Kansas legislature right now. One of those being the need for more energy capacity, okay? And that's because of economic development. So right now we have a little bit of excess energy in Kansas for our largest public utility, Evergy, which has 1 million customers in Kansas, several more in Missouri. They're looking at 400 megawatts of excess capacity. So that's about a power plant unit of energy, if you will. You know, power plant can range anywhere from 400 megawatts to 600 megawatts or even more. But if we got more projects coming in, Evergy says in the next 5 to 10 years, they're looking at 1,200 megawatts of power demand for data centers, new advanced manufacturing. We got Panasonic coming online next year in Kansas. So as those needs come through the economic development pipeline, along with the changes in resource adequacy by the regional power provider, Southwest Power Pool, we're looking at a retirement of one of our oldest coal unit in Kansas that we're going to need more capacity is the argument there, okay? That makes sense. So we'll keep going to the next. So energy capacity and need for more energy. Another policy driver is high electric bills. And Evergy won't tell you that they have a problem with high electric bills. But this is from the regulatory agency, and you can see that Kansas not only has third in line for the average monthly bill, but if you look under the average price cents per kilowatt hour, we're actually number 3 compared to other states behind Minnesota and Colorado. So we're third highest for the average monthly bill and the third highest in terms of electric rate on residential customers. Okay, do we got Missouri on here? Here's Missouri. So Missouri's got significantly less cents per kilowatt electric rate and about $3 less per month for Evergy customers in Missouri. So it's pretty interesting. One thing I'll point out here while we're on the slide is, look who has the highest electric rates here, Minnesota and Colorado. Look at their average monthly consumption, okay, significantly less, and that's why they're on the lowest amount of monthly bills. So while they have the highest electric rate, they have the lowest monthly bills because they don't use as much energy per person, per household. That's correct. Yes.
What's correct?
What the weather costs. So how much do we call on heating and cooling plays a big role into how much electricity we use or energy generally. Interesting point is that when you get on these investor calls with the utilities, they say something like, we had unfavorable weather, which was good weather. And so they didn't call on, we didn't call on cooling as much. So their demand for electricity was down. Let's say, well, wait a second, unfavorable weather is, so how do we align profits for our utilities with lower energy use? That's a big key here. So anyway, I thought that's good to point out, and you might remember this when we go to some of the opportunities here, is that Kansas is high in both bills and price, and still high in consumption. And if we were to change that like Minnesota and Colorado, maybe we could flip it around so we could become more competitive like, you know, Missouri or Iowa, for example. So, okay, next slide, please. So this information is getting presented to legislators. So you have those different scenarios, the need of energy capacity, the kind of argument we should continue to lower bills for consumers, etc. So there's a couple different strategies. One is that we can continue coal in Kansas. Kansas has about 9 coal units, 3 major plants that you see here, most being run by Evergy. There's one by Sunflower Cooperative out in western Kansas. Coal for a long time was our primary source of power in Kansas. We had a nuclear plant come on in early 1980s, but for the most part, we've relied on coal. In Kansas, we get that coal from Wyoming like a lot of states do. Every time we run one of these coal plants, we're paying a price premium for the power. And also, not to mention the atmospheric pollution and toxic pollution that communities have to deal with by being around these coal plants that continue to be aging. A lot of them are like Lawrence up there is getting close to almost 60 years old. Lacine over here. On the left. On the left, good, thank you. On the left-hand side of the screen, Lacine is our newest coal power plant unit as far as upgrades go. And then you have Jeffrey Energy Center near St. Mary's, Kansas, on the bottom right. Okay, so Senate Bill 455 is a lot like one of the bills that Mac was talking about as far as keeping a reliable energy, and then if you retire a coal plant, you have to replace it with an equal or greater amount of power. This bill in Kansas is said would create a regulatory checklist, and they call it a rebuttal presumption, in the sense that before you could retire a coal plant, you had to make sure that it met adequacy reserve requirements, that it wasn't prompted by environmental, social, and governance policies, okay, articulated by maybe Wall Street, you know, a risk investment framework there. That's been more of a political buzzword, ESG, to try to say that, you know, being a United Nations agenda, you know, plan to try to take people's energy democracy, energy options away, go to green energy, etc. Senate Bill 455 initially was a bill by the utilities say that seldom used coal plants or low capacity factor coal plants could stay online and gain full cost recovery. So if you just had a standby coal plant, we still can recover all the costs with that standby coal plant just in case we need it. All right. It's essentially it's a way for them to continue to get money out of these things that may not be used or useful all the time. It's kind of like I think about a clunker car in the driveway. You know, that car that's maybe you don't drive, it's still there. Maybe you could drive it, you really had to, but it's really just creating higher bills for you, insurance payments, you know, continue to fix and maintain it. The regulatory checklist was Senate Bill 456. That got combined with 455. So next slide. Yes.
Sorry, is the idea that ratepayer money in Kansas could be used to recover the costs on that coal plant? Is that where they would recover the costs? So they could raise rates based on the debt that they owe on those coal plants?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. And practically they've been doing that all the time, but we run our coal plants in Kansas less than half the time on average, okay? We actually run them full time for less than half the days, if you think about it like that, when we just blast them on because everybody's calling for air conditioning in triple digit temperatures, okay? So that's what's going on. As we continue to use less and less coal, they want to make sure that they don't consider those, the regulatory agency doesn't consider them not used or useful, and then they can't recover those costs. So it's a little bit of an insurance policy, if you will. The other thing is that Evergy wants to build a new gas plant. And talked about nuclear plants and construction work in progress on Missouri side. In Kansas is primarily a new gas plant. And we're just saying that that would be a wrong investment for Kansas because only a couple of years ago, we remember when gas prices went through the roof when we had a Winter Storm Uri. And to the tune that Kansas legislature had to, I say, bail out, but loan city governments money to pay their gas bills. So anyway, I'd say that this is a wrong approach for Kansas. Of course, getting natural gas through fracking offers its own water pollution problems and air problems through methane. And most of the gas we get for a new gas plant in Kansas would come from out of state. And that bill, 2527, is a fancy financing bill that it combines a couple of things that I heard in Missouri, both the planned in service accounting bill and also the construction work in progress specifically for gas plants. Another piece of legislation, a couple of them that we have in Kansas, is good, positive for solar energy. One of them is expanding net metering, which would, right now we have a cap for a 1% of the energy or the utilities energy capacity. Peak demand can be filled with net metering, and that's it. We're going to ramp that up to 5% of its energy can come from net metered systems, which is good. We also are trying to pass a bill that already got passed in Missouri, so we're trying to catch up a little bit, but allow for solar and homeowners associations. We had a hearing on a House bill that I didn't list here, but it had no opponents. Yet, unfortunately, the committee in the House voted it down by like a vote or two. So that's too bad, but we still have a chance on the Senate bill. Don't ask me. Don't figure, they just thought maybe that there could be a way for homeowners associations could allow for citizens to change over time, but it's really clunky. Practically, homeowners associations are suing residents when they put on solar and or blocking them completely. I know someone in Olathe, Kansas, tried to install solar on their house, got told to take it down even after it was up. Now those solar panels are sitting in his family's garage. You can't collect too much sun in the garage. So it's a really shame. We're not giving up on all that. Next slide. So another policy consideration here is that the cost of energy, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I just want you to see that here and now, and this is unsubsidized, renewable energy strategies are more cost competitive than our conventional fossil fuels. Okay, so you just look at them there. Now, what happens when the sun isn't shining, the wind isn't blowing? Well, let's go to the next slide. Let's do the next slide. We'll come back to this one. Okay, so if you firm up the intermittency, which means add storage onto your solar and wind, and here in the Southwest Power Pool, so in the the third main column on your graph there, Southwest Power Pool, if you look for the SPP, firming up the solar and wind is still within a range of a gas combined cycle, certainly levelized cost of energy, and way better than a gas peaking plant in terms of those costs. So that means if you firm up, if you provide a storage backup for solar and wind, they're essentially cost competitive. Now we'll go to the slide, the previous slide, and articulate a little bit more. So if you add the technologies plus the federal tax credits, the PTC and the ITC, production tax credit and investor tax credit, they become even more cost competitive compared to costs of selected conventional generation. This comes from Lazard's levelized cost of energy analysis just from this April. It's the, I would say, the kind of the gold standard for energy cost analysis. So they're an independent firm. So anyway, let's keep on going. Next, please. So here's another policy consideration that we should all keep in mind. Something called climate change and the impact of atmospheric pollution, that is greenhouse gases. And you can see though, both the electric power industry and commercial and residential, namely buildings, and the way we provide temperature conditioning in buildings, the way we power them in terms of electricity, those are big parts of the equation here for climate change and greenhouse gases. Next slide. Of course, you all know all this. Energy efficiency is the greenest, but also the most cost affordable type of energy supply out there. The more we can save energy, the less we have to generate. Unfortunately, Kansas is second of all states in terms of energy efficiency and helping their residents save energy. This is just a nice second worst. Did I say second best? Second worst. Oh, okay, yeah, second worst. Yeah, so way on the bottom. Way on the bottom. Okay, just to make that clear. Fortunately, we have opportunity with historic and unprecedented funding for tackling energy efficiency. $128 million be coming into Kansas. And so that's a huge opportunity for us to try to make an impact, improve our rating, but also help provide that energy capacity at the lowest cost. Okay, next slide, please. And here's a little graph that I created that kind of sums it all up. The clean energy transition in Kansas, I'm saying that continuing to rely on the costly coal only is more expensive. Natural gas isn't the answer for a variety of reasons. It is, you know, a lot of folks will say gas is cheap. Well, until it's not, as I said earlier, what we could do is everything on the right here and invest in clean energy solutions. That's investing in energy efficiency, which actually of all of the jobs in the energy sector, the number one job, the leading category for jobs is energy efficiency. Folks like Mike that want to help people save energy, insulation and all that stuff, right? You know, number one amount for top amount of jobs in that sector, more than wind turbine jobs and solar jobs, et cetera. So oil jobs, coal plant jobs, et cetera. So that's really important. Renewables, Kansas is in the top 10 of both of top 10 of states. Some of the best for both the wind resource and the solar resource. Unfortunately, we're in the bottom 10 of solar energy. We're number 44 in solar energy right now. In 20 years, in wind, we created 40 plus wind farms, billions of dollars in investments, thousands of jobs, millions of dollars to landowners. In 20 years, we surpassed coal for the most predominant form of energy for electricity. And we could do the same with solar. We can modernize our grid, we can include energy storage, and we can capture all the benefits that go with that. So that's my speech in a nutshell.
I just wanted to add that
Yeah.
that the Metropolitan Energy Center is actually starting a program to train certified people in energy efficiency jobs. They're training certified home energy raters, certified energy modelers, and certified rating field inspectors, and then also commercial energy technicians. And they're providing that training for free and the certification, and they're working with companies. They're looking for companies that want to hire those kind of people, and working with them to help, in that end of things as well. So if you have any companies that need energy efficiency people, people trained to provide those services, contact Metropolitan Energy Center and talk to Mary English, and she would be more than happy to hear from you. So hopefully we'll get some more people, more boots on the ground.
Thank you. Yes.
Careers.